209 points. That is the exact tally Andrea Kimi Antonelli holds at the 2026 summer break, a number that makes him the youngest driver in history to lead the Formula One World Championship standings in only his second full season. He has secured 6 wins from the first 12 rounds, including victories in China, Japan, Miami, Canada, Monaco, and Belgium, building a 50-point cushion over Lewis Hamilton and sitting 59 points clear of teammate George Russell. Yet this historic dominance sits atop a foundation so controversial that 3 rival manufacturers formally demanded the governing body investigate whether the car underneath him was even compliant with the technical regulations when it crossed those finish lines. The tension hanging over this championship is not whether Antonelli can drive, but whether the Mercedes power unit that propelled him to the top of the table exploited a critical ambiguity in Article C5. 3. Regarding geometric compression ratios. While the FIA privately cleared the engine after conducting undisclosed hot temperature checks prompted by complaints from Honda, Ferrari, and Audi, the resolution did not come through a simple verdict of innocence or guilt. Instead, the sport was forced into an unprecedented mid-season regulatory rewrite approved unanimously by all 5 power unit manufacturers, fundamentally changing how engines are measured going forward while leaving every single point Antonelli scored completely intact. This creates a lingering question that no official statement has fully answered. If the advantage was significant enough to force a rule change in the middle of a title fight, why does the record book treat those early season performances as untouchable? Rivals suspect the answer lies in internal engine materials specifically engineered to expand significantly under thermal load. The theory suggests that while the Mercedes cylinder geometry measured perfectly legal at ambient temperature against the 16.0 maximum limit, the effective compression ratio could approach 18,001 once the power unit reached operating temperature. Estimates circulating in the paddock place the potential performance gain from this thermal expansion anywhere between 10 and 13 horsepower, though some reports suggest the advantage could be even larger under specific conditions. But here is where the narrative fractures in a way that complicates any easy conclusion about cheating versus clever engineering. Not every specialist outlet accepted the loophole premise as fact, with GP fans publishing analysis explicitly titled around evidence that disproves the compression allegations entirely. So we are left with a genuine disagreement among experts, not just rivals with axes to grind, about whether the mechanical advantage actually existed in the form described. This uncertainty matters because it separates confirmed regulatory evolution from unproven performance claims. What we know for certain is that the FIA issued a statement confirming a significant effort was invested in finding a solution, resulting in compression ratios now being controlled in both cold and hot conditions from June 1, 2026, and exclusively at 180 degrees Celsius from 2027 onward. What remains contested is whether that solution corrected an illegality or merely closed a legitimate interpretation gap that Mercedes simply found faster than anyone else. The distinction is everything when evaluating a rookie's championship lead built during the exact window where the rules were most fluid. 6 victories define this statistical anomaly. China, Japan, Miami, Canada, Monaco, and Belgium represent the specific battlegrounds where Antonelli dismantled expectations before the August pause. No teenager has ever accumulated this much championship equity in modern Formula One history. His rookie campaign included a mid-season slump that makes this current form even more remarkable by comparison. The contrast is stark. Previous struggles vanished completely. Consistency replaced volatility entirely. This transformation did not happen through luck or inherited machinery alone, as Mercedes deputy team principal Bradley Lord identified a specific developmental reset around Baku in 2025 as the true inflection point for his trajectory. Lord stated directly that it was a really useful reset around sort of Baku time for him to really double down, specifically crediting redoubled efforts with race engineer Bono and increased regularity of visits to the simulator with greater intensity and depth of work there. That technical partnership became the bedrock upon which 6 wins were constructed during the opening half of 2026. Simulator sessions evolved from routine preparation into intensive development laboratories where driver feedback directly shaped set of philosophies. Bono's engineering guidance provided the stability needed to translate raw pace into repeatable race-winning execution across vastly different circuit characteristics. But can a driver truly sustain this level of performance when the entire paddock is scrutinizing both his talent and the legality of the car beneath him? The psychological dimension separates fleeting success from genuine championship contention at this elite level. Lord observed that you can just see his confidence and his self-belief building from weekend to weekend, while noting that his feet are very firmly on the ground despite the mounting pressure. That groundedness matters enormously when external noise reaches fever pitch regarding engine regulations and rival complaints. A less mature competitor might have cracked under the combined weight of leading the standings and defending their equipment's integrity simultaneously. Antonelli instead channeled focus inward, converting potential distraction into additional lap time. His calm maturity became as valuable as any horsepower advantage during critical qualifying sessions and strategic race moments. To see a driver in just his second season in Formula One performing with so much consistency and with a real sort of calm maturity is incredibly impressive, according to Lord's assessment via Motorsport Week. This verbal endorsement carries weight precisely because it addresses the intangible qualities that telemetry cannot capture. Points totals measure outcomes, but not the mental fortitude required to achieve them repeatedly against seasoned champions like Hamilton and Russell. The 50-point gap over Hamilton represents more than mechanical superiority. It reflects a competitor who has mastered the intersection of personal development and technical adaptation faster than anyone anticipated. So where does that leave our understanding of his achievement relative to the broader controversy? We must separate the driver's documented progression from the unresolved engineering debate surrounding his machinery. The 6 wins stand as verified results regardless of how one interprets the compression ratio dispute. Antonelli himself admitted he did not expect to be leading the championship this season, a statement that underscores the organic nature of his rise rather than any predetermined team strategy favoring him over Russell. His surprise mirrors the paddock's collective astonishment at both his pace and his poise. The numbers tell one story of dominance. The human element tells another of accelerated growth. Both narratives coexist without canceling each other out, creating a complex portrait of a champion emerging amid regulatory turbulence. Article C5. 3 of the 2026 technical regulations established a hard ceiling that seemed unambiguous on paper, setting a maximum geometric compression ratio of 16.0 for any cylinder. This limit was originally measured only at ambient or cold temperature, a specification that appeared straightforward until competitors began analyzing Mercedes' straight-line performance data. The all-new power unit formula introduced this year gave every manufacturer a fresh design with a much bigger electrical component than before, creating an environment where interpretation disputes over measurement methodology became not just possible but almost inevitable due to the lack of historical precedent for enforcement. New rules breed new arguments. Precedent had vanished completely. Innovation filled the void. Rivals suspected that Mercedes utilized internal engine materials engineered to expand significantly under heat, allowing a meaningfully higher effective compression ratio once the power unit reached operating temperature. Some estimates circulating among competing teams put this hot running ratio as high as approaching 18,001, a figure that would represent a substantial deviation from the cold measurement compliance. MotorBiscuit framed this approach as the 130°C loophole, characterizing it as clever legal but controversial engineering rather than outright cheating. The distinction matters because it suggests the advantage existed in the gray area between regulatory text and physical reality, where the written rules said one thing, but thermal dynamics potentially allowed another. But what happens when the governing body's private findings contradict the paddock's collective suspicion? Here is where the narrative takes a turn that defies simple categorization as either vindication or condemnation. Despite the intensity of rival allegations, the FIA conducted secret compression checks on the Mercedes engine at hot operating temperature and privately told the team the power unit was legal under the regulations as they stood at the time of testing. This private legality finding created a paradoxical situation where the engine was simultaneously deemed compliant by officials yet suspicious enough to warrant covert investigation. The gap between official approval and competitor distrust reveals how the 2026 regulation struggled to account for material science advancements that could make static measurements obsolete once temperatures climbed. How do you police a dimension that literally changes between the garage and the grid? The estimated performance gain, if the alleged higher hot compression ratio were real, sits at roughly 10 to 13 horsepower per some reporting, with other analysis suggesting the advantage could be larger under specific conditions. However, this magnitude remains a rival and media estimate rather than an FIA-confirmed number, meaning the exact competitive benefit has never been officially quantified by regulators. The governing body's statement addressed only the measurement method fix going forward, deliberately avoiding any retroactive assessment of performance differentials. This silence on quantified gains leaves the true impact of the thermal expansion theory permanently unresolved in the public record. We know the suspicion existed. We know the private clearance happened. What we cannot confirm is precisely how many tenths per lap the controversy was actually worth during those first 6 victories. Go back to that opening line about 219 points and the youngest championship leader in history, because those numbers only exist in their current form due to what happened behind closed doors after Honda, Ferrari, and Audi formally challenged Mercedes over the compression ratio interpretation. These 3 manufacturers did not merely grumble in the paddock or leak anonymous briefings to friendly journalists. They filed official complaints demanding regulatory intervention based on their analysis of Mercedes' performance characteristics. The collective action forced the FIA into an investigative posture that went beyond standard post-race scrutineering protocols, triggering the undisclosed compression checks conducted at hot operating temperature that ultimately determined the championship trajectory. Pressure mounted relentlessly. Rivals demanded answers. Officials had to act. The secrecy surrounding these inspections was absolute, with no public announcement of when testing occurred or what specific methodologies were employed during the evaluation process. This opacity served a dual purpose, protecting proprietary technical information from competing manufacturers, while allowing regulators to conduct thorough analysis without external interference or premature conclusions. When the FIA privately communicated to Mercedes that the engine was legal under the regulations as they stood at the time of testing, that verdict carried enormous weight precisely because it came after targeted investigation rather than routine compliance verification. The team received clearance not through default acceptance but through active scrutiny that failed to find a breach. Yet this private exoneration did not satisfy the complainants or resolve the underlying tension about whether the written rules adequately captured the intended competitive balance. What makes this sequence so critical to understanding Antonelli's championship position is that the private legality finding became the foundation upon which all subsequent results were allowed to stand. Had the FIA discovered non-compliance during those secret hot temperature checks, the entire narrative of 2026 would have been rewritten with penalties, disqualifications, or retroactive adjustments that could have erased Antonelli's 6-win tally entirely. Instead, the absence of any stripped points or championship standings modifications means those 219 points carry the full authority of regulatory approval, even if rival teams continue to question the philosophical fairness of the outcome. The governing body essentially validated the performance window through which Antonelli achieved his historic lead, making his statistical achievement inseparable from the bureaucratic process that permitted it. So how does a sport move forward when the resolution satisfies neither the accusers nor the court of public opinion?